Picture yourself inside an ultra-exclusive VIP lounge. The music is blasting, people are laughing, drinks are everywhere, and then suddenly, the entire place falls silent. Every head in the room turns for one reason. Michail Jordan is standing face to face with Rich Paul, and the tension is impossible to ignore. This wasn't some casual celebrity greeting. Jordan had his grip locked onto Rich's shoulder, staring at it with the same cold intensity that terrified opponents throughout the 90s. It looked like the basketball icon had finally grown tired of hearing his legacy questioned by the man who has spent years publicly pushing the case for LeBron James as the true greatest of all time. Meanwhile, Rich reportedly looked completely uncomfortable, like he wanted the moment to end as quickly as possible. All the debate show arguments, podcast narratives, and statistical comparisons suddenly felt meaningless when the very player he had been criticizing was standing directly in front of him. And the wildest part? This tension didn't appear out of nowhere. Over the years, Rich Paul has made several controversial comments about Jordan, including claims tying him to damaging cultural eras and insisting he was never truly the greatest player ever. At this point, the GOAT debate has clearly become bigger than championships or numbers. Behind the scenes, many fans believe there has been a coordinated effort from Clutch Sports and its media allies to reshape NBA history before LeBron eventually retires. Whether you agree or not, the narrative war has become impossible to ignore. And if you want to understand why Jordan supposedly reached his limit at that Miami gala, you have to go back to the comments Rich Paul has been making for years. One major flashpoint came during the Platinum Antlers media run in 2023, when Rich argued on a podcast that LeBron's journey was tougher because he spent his entire career chasing the shadow of Michail Jordan from the moment he entered the spotlight as a teenager.
But I just think LeBron's antlers is in platinum and Michael's may be in gold. Why? Because when you think about, he had to be compared to Mike. Who did Mike have to be compared to?
Talk about it.
Imagine the confidence it takes to reframe an entire basketball legacy like that. The argument being pushed is that LeBron entered the league under heavier expectations than what it supposedly takes to dominate the NBA for over a decade and a half at the highest level. Some even go further, suggesting that self-branding moments like The Chosen One are somehow more demanding than surviving the physical, brutal era of the bad boy Pistons night after night. To many fans, that kind of comparison feels less like analysis and more like a narrative shift, an attempt to soften the weight of Michail Jordan's 6 championships by making greatness seem easier to reach than it really is. Things got even more controversial in a widely discussed podcast appearance where Rich Paul was asked about the success of the Jordan brand. Instead of focusing solely on Jordan's 6 titles, competitive dominance, or business instincts, the explanation sparked debate for pointing to broader cultural factors of the 80s and 90s as part of the context behind his global rise. That interpretation quickly drew backlash online, with many arguing it downplayed Jordan's individual impact on both basketball and business. In the end, it became less about one clean explanation and more about how differently people try to frame legacy, whether through pure achievement, cultural timing, or a mix of both.
These people had basically not even careers or high-paying jobs. They just had hustles. So now when you bring forth the crack epidemic, it created a revenue stream amongst a group of consumers that, number one, would have never had that.
He even went as far as to say, and I quote, "People didn't buy MJ because they wanted to be like Mike. They wanted to be like Max, the guy with the BMW and the attractive girlfriend." It's a striking claim, shifting the idea of influence away from Jordan himself and toward a broader cultural image of status and lifestyle. Instead of the classic "be like Mike" narrative rooted in athletic greatness, this framing suggests people were more drawn to symbols of success outside the game, wealth, image, and social appeal. Naturally, that interpretation sparked debate, because it challenges the long-held belief that Jordan's appeal was primarily built on basketball dominance and competitive legacy.
You used me as an example because I was sitting in front of you. You said, it's not that Michail Jordan did this, it's that the influencer who had the BMW or whatever, you said, like Max with the fly girl in the BMW. So you're saying that before there were...
The claim being made here is essentially that Michail Jordan's appeal wasn't purely built on greatness, but also on timing and cultural circumstances. Taken to its extreme, that framing starts to suggest that his fan base was influenced less by athletic dominance and more by image, status, and the era he played in. That's where the controversy really kicks in. The argument expands beyond basketball and into culture, suggesting that figures like Martin Lawrence and Will Smith helped shape the sneaker era just as much, if not more, than Jordan himself. From that perspective, Jordan becomes less of a singular force and more of a product of the 80s and 90s media landscape, where timing, lifestyle, and visibility all played a role. Critics of that view see it very differently. For them, Jordan's legacy isn't something that can be reduced to market conditions or cultural coincidence. It's built on sustained dominance, global influence, and the transformation of the NBA into a worldwide product. The Air Jordan brand, now valued in the billions, is viewed as a direct extension of that competitive identity, one rooted in excellence rather than circumstance. Where the debate gets more heated is in the implication that modern stars could have achieved the same outcome in a different era. That comparison between eras, especially between Jordan and LeBron, often fuels these discussions, with arguments about media exposure, branding, and opportunity being used to support different sides. Supporters of Jordan's legacy push back strongly against the idea that he was lucky or simply benefited from timing. They point out that he didn't just exist in the spotlight, he helped create it, turning NBA players into global icons in a way that hadn't existed before. In that view, he didn't inherit a superstar market, he built. At the core of the disagreement is a larger question: is legacy defined purely by performance, or is it also shaped by the cultural environment around it? And depending on how that question is answered, the same facts can lead to completely opposite conclusions.
A whole nother thing that Mike never had to deal with, because his hardest critic was probably Peter Vesey.
Yep. Straight up.
There's a clear pattern in the way this debate gets framed. Every time Rich Paul comments on Jordan's legacy, the interpretation is that he's not just analyzing history, he's reshaping it. The argument goes that instead of focusing purely on Jordan's dominance, the discussion shifts toward context, era, culture, media environment, and branding conditions that, to some fans, that feels like a slow reframing of greatness itself. If Jordan wasn't just the most dominant player ever, then maybe he was also a product of timing, media structure, and cultural momentum. And if that idea takes hold, it subtly changes how people evaluate what came after him. Supporters of Jordan push back hard against that line of thinking. They argue his legacy isn't something that can be softened or reinterpreted through external factors. In their view, it's built on performance, competitiveness, and a level of global influence the league had never seen before. From that perspective, the Air Jordan era didn't happen because of marketing conditions. It happened because Jordan forced the world to pay attention. That's where the deeper tension sits. It's not just a Jordan versus LeBron comparison, it's a disagreement over what greatness even means. Is it pure dominance on the court? Or is it also about how a player fits into the media and cultural ecosystem of their time? And once that question enters the conversation, every new comment, podcast clip, or interview gets interpreted through that lens, whether the intent is to compare eras, defend a client, or simply analyze how sports culture evolved. At its core, the debate keeps circling the same issue, whether legacy is something created purely by performance, or something shaped and sometimes reshaped by the stories told about it afterward.
That one right there made me the greatest player of all time. That's what I felt.
A lot of this debate comes down to interpretation. When LeBron has publicly referred to himself as the greatest, some fans see it as confidence and self-belief, while others interpret it as unnecessary self-validation, especially when compared to Michail Jordan, who built his case through performance and results rather than statements. From that perspective, Jordan's legacy is often framed as something proven on the court, rather than declared off it. 6 championships, sustained dominance across multiple eras of competition, and a reputation built through consistency rather than public self-crowning are the core pillars people point to when making his case. On the other side, LeBron's approach is often read differently. When he talks about chasing a ghost from Chicago, supporters see it as motivation, an abstract standard of greatness pushing him forward. Critics, however, interpret that language differently, arguing that turning Jordan into a symbolic figure can sometimes blur the line between myth and reality in how fans compare eras. That's where the real tension in the GOAT conversation lives. It's not just about statistics or championships, it's about storytelling. Jordan's era is often treated as definitive proof of dominance, while LeBron's longevity and modern era achievements are sometimes framed as redefining what greatness looks like over time. And depending on which lens you use, the same quotes, moments, and narratives can be read in completely opposite ways, either as confidence and evolution of the game, or as attempts to reshape an already established hierarchy. At the end of the day, the debate isn't just about who was better, it's about what people believe greatness is supposed to look like in the first place.